Good morning, Sunnyvale. Be just a moment before we get started. Good morning. Okay, just about ready to get started. See a few people have joined. Oh, wait. One more thing. Okay, good morning, Sunnyvale. Happy New Year's Eve. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thanks for joining me again this week for my last weekly virtual office hours for 2021. I hope everyone is being safe and staying healthy. We've now reached 655 days since the March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. 21 months ago, I converted my weekly office hours at a local coffee shop into these weekly live stream addresses, and I haven't missed a week since. I now am following up our live stream sessions with in-person meetings at Bean Scene on Murphy Avenue. If you're interested, just email me and we can meet up over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. People still say they really enjoy hearing from their mayor each week, whether it's these live sessions or whether or not they watch it delayed a little bit later in the week. But these weekly sessions really allow me a chance to reflect on what's happened over the last few weeks. And they, allow me to give you some updates, some news, answer some of your questions, and just provide some general words of encouragement. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale as much as I can. About 6 months ago, I started changing my background art every week with art provided by art enthusiasts and artists here in Sunnyvale from the Sunnyvale Art Club. This week's piece is called Spring Cactus, and it's by Chris McDonough. If you want to purchase this piece, just contact me and I'll put you in contact with the artist. But let's go ahead and get started on what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Things have been a little bit slower in the last 2 weeks because of the holidays. So last Monday, California's Independent Redistricting Commission voted unanimously to approve the final maps. Whether or not there'll be some lawsuits after that, there probably will be. But at least for now, they've met their requirements as far as meeting the December 27th requirement. Even though there was the delay for getting the actual census data, they've done a lot of marathon meetings over the last few weeks and actually over the last month or so. And, for me, I've actually, called in and ridden in a few times, but they had, I can't remember how many meetings, but But finally, they finalized the district boundaries. I know that there was a big thing from a congressional standpoint of initially there was, after Sam Liccardo said he didn't like the concept of San Jose being split into, I think, 4 different congressional districts, as opposed to the 3 that's there now. There was a proposal for a congressional district that went from, I think, Mountain View, all the Palo Alto, Mountain View, all the way to San Luis Obispo. But, they finally discarded that, and these districts that they came up with will take effect in the June 2022 primaries, and then continue on for the next 10 years until the next census. But, it was the independent commission, so it was, trying to get basically a less political vision of how to split up those districts. And for my standpoint, I did a lot of speaking and writing to basically maintain mainly in the congressional district CA 17. I think Ro Khanna has represented us very well. And, there's a lot of things and keeping with Fremont. Fremont is the second biggest city in Alameda County, much like we're the second biggest city in Santa Clara County. And so, that Fremont, Milpitas, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, and a few other cities ringing the bay, having a lot of the common issues as far as sea level rise. So it was actually a very positive thing from that standpoint. So Sunnyvale stayed in CA 17, Ro Khanna's district. From as far as the state Senate districts, we'll after next year, we'll no longer be in Senator Becker's district, but we'll be moving to a new district, SD10, which will be under Bob Wachowski, which includes Fremont and has a similar sort of thing as the congressional district. But that district will have a new state senator at the end of next year, because Senator Wachowski is term limited. So he is retiring from the Senate. And so we'll have multiple people running here in Sunnyvale, or running for the Senate district to represent Sunnyvale. And I've already been talking to some of those members. And then as far as the state assembly district, we have a brand new AD 26 district with no incumbent. And ultimately what the redistricting put was merge Campbell with what I'll say is Mark Berman's existing district, and kind of carved out Sunnyvale. And so Evan Lowe and Mark Berman are living in the same district. But ultimately Evan has announced at the beginning of this week that he'll be moving into Sunnyvale, where his parents have lived for years. And, he's actually been relatively active. I've been talking to him on issues for many years since I got on city council. And so Evan is actually moving to Sunnyvale to run for our district as far as that's concerned. So the new assembly district. So we'll be hearing more about that and other people running for that assembly district, I'm assuming relatively soon. And then as far as Sunnyvale's redistricting, we have a March deadline. They had a December deadline because they have primaries. Since we don't have primaries in Sunnyvale, and we're basically going to elect the other 3 remaining district council members at the end of November 2022, our deadline was out a little bit. So, from our standpoint, we have to have our maps, our district boundaries for our 6 districts completed by sometime in March, to the county registrar's office. And so we have actually several upcoming meetings. January 13th, there'll be a joint meeting between the city council and our redistricting commission to review the maps. And ultimately, that will reduce those maps down to 3 to 5 maps, finally chosen in mid-January. And then there's a process to weed those final maps down to a a final selected map. And there's other redistricting commissions going on right now. There's input for the Foothill De Anza district. There's input for the Sunnyvale school district. So there's still redistricting going on. It was just from a state level, all that needed to be done by the end of December. And so regardless, they've marched out, or they've carved out the appropriate boundaries for all the state, for the congressional as well as the state assembly and senate districts, and then we'll see whether or not what happens from lawsuit standpoints, but those will continue going forward. And then let's see, last Wednesday, Governor Newsom spoke, of course, about vaccinations and booster requirements in California and expanded testing for students in the state. So because the rise of the Omicron variant, and it's now, of course, the dominant version of the coronavirus around the country. But what the governor basically said was that the state will provide 1 or 2 rapid COVID tests for K through 12 public school students returning from winter break. And so the state will order, I think, 6 million tests to be provided by health partners to then give to students for free. And so that's going on, as well as for healthcare workers in the state. The governor said that they will now be required to receive a booster shot of COVID-19 by February 1st, 2022. And the county did something similar a little bit this week, but last week it was by February 1st, 2022. Those healthcare workers, from a governor standpoint, need to have their booster shot. And this is ultimately, to prevent those staffing shortages, to make sure that, the staff aren't getting COVID and are being protected as much as possible. And then on Monday of this week, and of course, last weekend was Christmas. So I hope everyone had a good Christmas holiday as far as that's concerned. I enjoyed it away from Sunnyvale for the first time in almost 2 years, got out of the state. So it was actually good to travel a bit. We were supposed to go on vacation last Christmas. And of course, at that point, the requirements went in place that you could only go 150 miles away from your home. And we had actually planned to go up to the snow in Oregon. Well, we didn't go last year, but we were able to go this year and enjoyed some snow. So that was actually very positive. So Christmas, I hope everyone had a good Christmas holiday. And, it was nice to kind of take a break from the, let's say, the hustle and bustle of constant emails and constant phone calls, and kind of disconnect for a little bit. So I hope everyone had a good Christmas break. As far as this week, of course, on Monday, the CDC changed its guidance on quarantining after exposure to COVID. So, anyone who tests positive from COVID, whether or not they had the vaccination, can, stop isolating after 5 days if they don't have symptoms, or if their symptoms are resolving. And that's relatively new. But, they still need to wear a mask around others for at least another 5 days. Previously the CDC was, recommending that anybody that was exposed to COVID-19 or tested positive needed to isolate for at least 10 days. And so, this time, if you test positive, and this is the whole thing, is what I've seen multiple, reports about it, is you're really most contagious in those first 5 days after you tested positive. So from that standpoint, they're trying to make it easier for people to at least not be stuck in their house or having to deal with all the issues of quarantining and not being able to at least go out and get food, pick up whatever. As long as they're masking and being safe, everything is good. And then on Tuesday of this week, Santa Clara County Health Officer, Dr. Cody, basically announced that workers in healthcare settings, nursing homes, homeless shelters, and correctional facilities need to get their booster by January 24th. So this is beyond what the governor put in place last week, but the mandate is expected to affect about 150,000 employees, that, public employees and private healthcare workers around the county, to make sure that they're getting their vaccine booster. And, all this is because, Omicron is spreading and, spreading very quickly. The cases here in Santa Clara County are spiking, and the majority of them are the Omicron variant. And it follows something similar that Contra Costa County did. They put something in on Monday to make sure that all their frontline workers are getting vaccinated and getting their boosters. And the good thing is hospitalization rates are flat right now in Santa Clara County, but Dr. Cody said she really expects that to rise quickly, and the booster mandate is an attempt to protect workers when the pressure mounts on the region's healthcare system, as more people are showing positive, are testing positive with COVID, and then conceivably having to go into hospital. So all that is a very preventative measure. And then yesterday, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency in 20 California counties after we've had record snowfall and rainfall over the last week. It's knocked out power, shut down major roads and freeways, and caused debris flow around, especially like Southern California and other hazards. So, the good news, of course, is we are about at 160% of our normal snowpack for this date and this time in the season. So we're ahead of our normal average, which is very positive. We know when we thought we were going to have another drought year would have been pretty troubling, to say the least. Would have actually increased the amount of water restriction measures that we needed to put in place. We'll see what the rest of the season looks like, but definitely it's a great start to the season as far as that's concerned. But the governor of Nevada declared a state of emergency earlier this week. Governor Newsom did the same for our state, and it's counties from LA County that it was hit by rains to the Sierras, which there's a lot of ongoing effects. So anybody who happened to be away up in Tahoe for the Christmas break, hopefully you were able to make it back without any issues. I know multiple people that have had, let's say, quite a few problems, to say the least. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. The Omicron variant is the big thing in the news. We now have 53.7 million cases nationally. That's up over 1.2 million just in the last week. We've had 243 million vaccinated with at least one dose. That's over 85% of adults with at least one dose, and almost 73% of adults are fully vaccinated. As far as deaths, we've had another 11,000 just in the last week, and we're now at 820,000 deaths of people that have been tested with COVID. And then for California, we've had 5.1 million positive cases. We've leapt to 12,000 cases a day on average. Just last week, we were at 5,500 cases. So, 5,700, 5,500 the week before, 5,700 last week. So definitely Omicron. A lot of people are getting that. The positive thing, of course, is, the studies are showing that this is less, hospitalizes a lot less people, and doesn't seem to be, it seems to be more on the level of a cold for the majority of the people that get the Omicron variant. California has had 75,000 fatalities, another 400 just in the last week. But on a positive note, we've had over 64 million vaccines administered. And we're still at, number 10 on states with people with at least one shot, with 79% of our population, and at 15 with those that are fully vaccinated, with 71% of our population is fully vaccinated. The county, of course, is doing great. We still have people testing positive for COVID. Almost 164,000. About 800,000, no, 164,000 have tested positive for COVID in our county, and that's up like 8,000 just in the last week, and that's up from 2,000 just a week ago. So week to week, we've been in the 2,000s. We've had 8,000 people that have tested positive of COVID just in the past week. This is seeing peaks that we saw almost a year ago. So definitely a lot of people are being tested, are showing tested positive with the COVID-19, basically Omicron variant to a large degree. We've had 1,940 deaths, another 10 in the last week. And then 92.3% of those 18 and older are fully vaccinated. And, almost 55% of those that are eligible for the booster have already received it. So, it's very positive from that standpoint. Our county is doing a great job. And I continue to do a lot of advocating to make sure that, we get as much testing and vaccinations in our city as much as possible. From a testing standpoint, the county test ban will be here. They're here on the first and third Thursday of every month at the Sunnyvale Community Center. And they take appointments 1 week ahead of that. So if you want to get an appointment for Thursday, January 6th, they'll be here from 9:30 to 4 p.m. Appointments are going quickly. I already got mine scheduled for next week, but you can go on to sccfreevax.org and see all the places around the county that ultimately have places where you can set an appointment for a test. So sccfreevax.org, or sorry, sccfreetest.org. And then of course, if you still need your booster or know somebody who hasn't got their shot, you can go to sccfreevax.org and vax.org and see one of the locations one of the many locations that are providing the booster and shots and even the flu shot around the county. Let's go ahead and get to some upcoming events. Of course, tomorrow, the Sunnyvale Farmers Market will be closed for New Year's Day. So no shopping at the farmers market tomorrow. Sunday, the 2nd, is the ice rink's last day. So if you haven't had a chance to go ice skating, or if you want to have your last chance at ice skating for at least this season, you can go to the right downtown, right at Murphy and Washington, and go skating. So looks like good weather this weekend as far as that's concerned. Not as rainy as it's been for the last week, but that will finish at the end of the day on Sunday. Tomorrow, actually, a new restaurant is opening, Pav Bhaji, and it's an Indian food truck that is moving to a brick and mortar location. So right at Fair Oaks and Tasman, Pav Bhaji Hut will be opening up. So they will have, I think, buy one, get one sort of gifts tomorrow. So if you get a chance, go by, say hello. Happy to see a new restaurant here opening up here in Sunnyvale. And then as far as upcoming council meetings, our first meeting of the new year will happen next Tuesday. It'll start with congratulating some of our Sunnyvale students who were final, basically award winners for the Santa Clara Valley Science and Engineering Fair. So, it's always good to honor them. And every year we try to do that. And then we'll be moving to a study session on the El Camino Real specific plan. And this has been a long time in coming. Ultimately, because of some of the state bills, we wanted to make sure that we had enough control to make sure that we continue to have mixed use, a certain amount of retail for the properties along El Camino Real. And so ultimately that's moved forward. We have then some outgoing. So we have the ceremonial outgoing for Councilmember Fong's departure from City Council. And then we also adopt an urgency ordinance and introduce some changes to the Sunnyvale Municipal Code, talking about subdivision of single-family lots, zoning, streets and sidewalks, and all that. And all that's related to some of the state legislation that's went in place, mainly Senate Bill 9 on housing development in single-family zoning districts, and what the state, and we already had properties that were split. The state tried to streamline that as much as possible, and while I think that definitely there's places that we could easily add duplexes, and I was on the planning commission, we added multiple duplexes or split lots along that time. The state kind of went through and streamlined it far too much, going as much as saying what setbacks should be and all that. And I think setbacks are really very critical to a certain degree, because they make sure that you don't encroach too closely on your neighbors. But we're creating and handling zoning changes to deal with those state changes. And the state changes go in effect at the beginning of next week. And of course, that's why we have an urgency ordinance to make these appropriate changes. We'll also be looking at purchasing a property that is currently owned by the SFPUC in northern Sunnyvale, and it's near Mazzano Way, near Fairwood Park. And ultimately, this is a piece of land that the SFPUC is looking at selling, and so Sunnyvale is coming in and looking, ultimately, I haven't read the report yet, but conceivably this is adding a park area in the north part of Sunnyvale. And then council will select a new vice mayor, which we do every year. So the vice mayor is a yearly duty. And I think we've only had one council member that's shown interest so far, so that should go fairly quick. And then we choose all of our intergovernmental responsibilities. So besides sitting on Sunnyvale City Council and those meetings, we also represent the city in lots of other organizations around the county, around the state. And so we'll be divvying up those positions. And then finally, we'll choose our seats on the dais. Hopefully at some point next year, we'll be back in person. So that looks, I'm looking forward to actually having in-person meetings again. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have a question, just add them to the comments. Alicia asked, "Hi, I'm wondering when apartments will get access to compost green bins. I did just read about the Sunnyvale Smart Station, so I will go down there and get an individual bin in the meantime. Thanks." So definitely the food cycle program that we've had throughout the city for almost 5 years now has been a big success. It's actually lowered our garbage rates. It's saved tons and tons of food from going into the landfill. And that would then, ultimately break down and create methane gas, greenhouse gases. So, what we put in place is, I think it was very forward thinking. Some of the new state laws that are going into place at the beginning of this year actually are forcing other cities to do exactly what we've already been doing. And our plan was to, we made decisions last year or this year during 2021 to talk about how we roll out that into multifamily, so into apartments, into condos. For a long time now, residents who wanted to be part of that program, living in condos, living in apartments, could already do it. They would just collect their food waste for the week and drop it off at the smart station. So, but what we're ultimately going to do, kicking off in 2022, is that same program on a multifamily site by multifamily site basis. So you can already collect your food. So thank you, Alicia, for wanting to take part in that program. It's actually it's a simple thing you can do, and it's amazing how much our food doesn't smell anymore now that we basically put our food waste out separately than our garbage waste. But from a certain standpoint, you can drop that off at the smart station. There is a bin there. There is a place for people to turn in their plastic bags of food. So if you have, moldy bread or bones or other things, that is always possible. But that will be rolling out over the next year. So hopefully your apartment building will be one of the first ones. Next question is, Jeff asked, what is happening with the old Walgreens on El Camino Real? So good news, Ace Hardware basically has taken over the lease of the building from Walgreens. Staff said that they're super excited about, coming here. Ace has been expanding in a lot of, small location, smaller hardware stores around the area. And, currently they're scheduled to be opening late January or early February. So I'm looking forward to seeing that move forward. David asks, what if we see flooding or downed trees in Sunnyvale? What do we need to do? It's been a very wet week, but I didn't hear of any major issues as far as that's concerned. But you can always report, flooding in Sunnyvale to 408-730-7400. And if you have downed trees, it's 408-730-7506 or 408 after 4 p.m. 408-730-7180. So, definitely it's been a wet week. Hopefully people didn't need sandbags. The city does provide sandbags at our courtyard that's on Commercial Street, right, basically right near Wolf Road, but between Central Expressway and Arquette. So you can always, always pick up sandbags as far as that's concerned. Let's see if there's any questions. Don't see any questions. Yeah, is the fair? Yes, Shane asks, is the Fair Oaks overpass at Kiefer ever going to be completed? Yes. So I have had several people ask about that overpass. Definitely, it's been postponed. It was supposed to be opening up right about now. It's now been pushed off to the spring. The biggest issue was, well, Caltrain wanted additional infrastructure changes, and so there were some changes because of Caltrain's construction near there and what they needed to do from that overpass. There's been a little bit of delay from getting some of the things, all the let's say deliveries and during the holidays, as well as kind of the ongoing effects of problems, the overall problems that we've had nationwide about getting certain things. But ultimately, it is rescheduled for spring. So we're about 4 months away from that finally being completed. It is, it does affect a lot of people from a traffic standpoint, but when it is done, there'll be dedicated there'll be new bike lanes and dedicated pedestrian bridge separate or pedestrian, let's say, sidewalk area that's on that bridge. So they're ultimately tearing down the old bridge that used to be there, the old pedestrian and bike bridge, and now you'll basically be going over Fair Oaks Bridge, like bikes and peds have been able to do for the last 6 months, but it is moving forward with a slight delay. I think that is all the questions for now. If you ever have questions, of course, just email me at council@larryklein.com and I'll be happy to answer them. But let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again for this last meeting of the year. Hopefully you've had a good holiday. As we say goodbye to 2021 and all the many challenges, I just want to say I thank you for your support. It'll be good to put 2021 behind us. It hasn't been an easy year, but I just wanted you to all to know that I'm always proud of our city, especially over the last 2 years during COVID. I'm thankful for our wonderful residents who are always looking for ways to help out others in their community, coming to me with good ideas and, trying to work out, ways to help out others, help out our community, make our city better. So I just want to thank you for that. The future, of course, it remains uncertain. New issues come up, but your actions, your attitude really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together. We will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a happy new year. And I wish you all a happy, healthy, and prosperous 2022. Take care. Until next week. Goodbye.